So we would like to welcome everyone to our presentation, and this is Preparing and Managing the Online Classroom in Higher Education. I'm Dr. Tricia Mikolon. I reside in Northeast Pennsylvania, and I work for the University of the Cumberlands. Dr. Littlebear?
Hello, I'm Dr. Sarah Littlebear. I'm also a faculty member at the University of the Cumberlands, and I reside in Georgia.
And I am Debra Perez. I'm a doctoral student at University of the Cumberlands, and I live in Minnesota.
So for time's sakes, we'll kind of start moving forward on our discussion. Our learning objectives today are to discuss how to set up the online classroom expectations in the syllabus to help create a professional learning environment, to create and develop a sense of community for online students, how to provide feedback and guidance online to enhance student development, and various assignments to enhance learning and reinforce the CACREP standards. Now, when we proposed this, things were not as big as they are online, and I'm sure a lot more of you understand that the online environment brings with it a specialized set of skills. There's a lot of different changes that are going on for everyone right now, and research showed prior to all of this going on, there was approximately 25% of all students were enrolled in CACREP programs throughout the country choosing online education. So with counselor education and mental health training, online was somewhat minimal. In today's day and age, with the recent changes, everything has changed over and a lot more people are teaching online, which I'm sure we're all experiencing this rapid change in our lifestyles, from work to Zoom meetings to school. Online learning means a variety of things. At the University of the Cumberlands, we utilize synchronized learning, which has the flexibility of online learning, but also has the interaction with the professors and the students. So we utilize Zoom, and it's just like this, the classroom, where we can see all of our students, they can meet with us, we get to hear their experiences, understand their viewpoints, their personalities, and it really creates the sense of a community that we're going to talk about a little bit more. Promoting that professionalism is something that we've started to work on, all of us in this new online world that we're in. So that's one of the important things that we're going to talk about in this training. Now, research has shown that interaction between faculty and staff, plus how we utilize technology, can kind of bridge that distance. And another important part that we want to pay attention to today is gatekeeping, supervision, and education, the very core of counselor education programs, making sure that we can utilize those in creative ways in the online environment. So first, we're going to talk about setting up an online class expectations and the syllabus. We're all aware that adult learners bring with them different ideals than maybe younger children. And those of you who are home teaching your grade school or high schoolers on class and homeschooling right now are experiencing a lot of this. But with adult learners, we want to keep in mind that they already have a self-concept of who they are and that their experience that they're bringing with them is important to them, but can also enhance the classroom and share to utilize with other students their experiences of viable examples of what counseling is like or whatever program that we're working on. Adult learners have a readiness to learn. They're already mature and they've decided to commit to this program, and they have an orientation of how they learn. So we want to make sure that we're addressing all of that. Some learn better through discussion, some through assignments, some through reading. So we want to incorporate that in the online classroom, just like in a brick and mortar classroom, incorporate all of those aspects together. The adult learner has motivation. They're there, they want to learn. We need to fuel that through viable discussions and interesting assignments to kind of keep them interested in what we're doing. Okay, sorry there. Somehow I got muted there. And that's one of the things that we work with online, right? The idea of rolling with technology. With online learners, most are very highly independent learners, and they like that time to be able to self-direct themselves of how to do assignments. They value their autonomy, and they're very open to collaborate work. So if we initiate it as instructors, the dreaded group projects or those conversations in classes, really involving students into this, that collaboration works wonderful, just as it would in a brick and mortar classroom. We want to assist everyone in learning in a way that works for them, but within the environment that we're on. And with Zoom and with all the different technology challenges that come, there's a lot that we as instructors can utilize to help that. So with classroom management, a lot of this with online learning starts with the syllabus. We want to provide clear expectations of what's expected for attendance, for the technology, and for behaviors that we're going to utilize. And we want to make sure that we're explaining how this can impact their grades so that students aren't kind of caught off guard when they come into it.
Dr. Mikolon, I wonder if we can make this PowerPoint full screen.
I can try. I thought I had it full screen and I apologize. On mine, it looks full screen. Hold on, I will see if I can get it and we'll move it forward. Is that better? Or is it still kind of?
There it goes.
Okay. So for examples from the syllabus that we may want to include is a discussion of attendance and participation. So what are we expecting? In a brick and mortar classroom where students are in front of us, there's that interaction that flows. With utilizing Zoom or Collaborate or these different online formats, we need to be able to help students understand what we expect of them, not just clicking in and watching, but interacting with us. So here's an example from a syllabus that we may outline, that we want them to talk, that it's expected that they will participate. And we might want to even break down those points very specifically. So, if it's worth 10 points, they get 5 points if they attend class on time and if they actively participate and if they're on camera. 3 to 4 points if there are 10 sessions and participations maybe through chat only. If they attend but they lack professionalism because perhaps they're walking around or moving their computers, things like that, that can be very distracting for other students. And maybe 0 points if they fail to attend or participate. The arrivals, making sure that we have everyone on time for those, just like you would in a classroom, because when people walk in, it can kind of reset that classroom. So that idea of that virtual classroom, maybe opening up the classroom a little early so that students are prepared and can get in and practice their technology. And you may have to spend the first class or two helping new students who are new to the program to walk through how to utilize that technology. Professionalism, we're going to want to define this so that they can understand that importance of it. And one of the things with online is that we want to make sure that the vocabulary, the expectations, but also the setting is something that we want to pay attention to for students, that they're going to be in a private area, that especially if you're doing counseling programs or different things like that where people may share their personal information, we don't want to have it out in a public realm. So protecting that confidentiality of students, or if we're talking about clients in this setting, we want to make sure that we're maintaining that for students. And here's an idea of something we may do, that you'll be in a place like a home, your home or an office. It's expected you won't be in a public place. Perhaps, a small child or a puppy, we understand that those things happen, especially working home, but we want to reduce that. The technology expectations, and we also want to make sure that they have their camera ready and practice this beforehand. And those of you utilizing Zoom can realize how overwhelming the technology can be at times and how it can give us a bit of a struggle. And during class, we want to make sure that we are reiterating expectations at the beginning of the first few classes, addressing inappropriate behaviors or concerns in class as necessary. And that can be done through chat privately, or after class, we can provide that in their attendance, participation, and professionalism grade. We can email them regarding any concerns. Meeting with students individually is a big thing. Just like we would in a classroom, meet with them before or after class, we can do that through Zoom or through other formats. And using class announcements to reiterate expectations for everyone. So that way we're not targeting one person, but we're reminding everyone of what our expectations are. The syllabus structure, according to CACREP, we need to align those assignments and objectives to the CACREP standards. And we're going to talk a little more about this when we get to the assignments. We want to make sure that there's rubrics to display how they're going to be assessed. And a great resource is the expectations from CACREP on syllabus and assignments. And it walks you through exactly what they're hoping that we will include in our syllabus. I'm going to pass now to Miss Debra Perez. Oh, no, I'm going to keep doing this part. Sorry, my bad. So creating a professional learning environment, considerations would be the technology and the timing if you're doing presentations like this, right? Keeping in mind where you start, where you stop. But that technology, the requirements, the width band of broadband aspects of it, the computer, do we expect them to utilize certain Word or PowerPoint, things like that, the expectations and understanding, and that support for increased communication. Emails are wonderful, and we want to make sure we're doing that. Social media, as we all know, ethically, we have to watch how we interact on social media because it represents not only ourselves, but our colleagues and our university as well. The assignments and structures and submissions, how is this going to be done? Are they going to be done through Box or Dropbox, directly through Blackboard? And then the gatekeeping, so meeting with students, providing feedback on assignments, meetings, emails, really making sure that we're available to our students. A lot of times students will say that they feel disconnected, but if we allow that time to interact, and also creating it from the beginning, that when we interact with students, it's not about there's a problem, but also just for clarification, just as it would be before any or after any other class. Hang out with me and ask about those assignments. It's not that you have to worry that you're in trouble if I want to meet with you, because online, sometimes people assume that a little more. Technology, one of the things that I utilize is that I clarify for them what the internet software is. And at the University of the Cumberlands, they can download it from the university. They can download Office. So Word and PowerPoint are something there. So directing them of what the expectation is, especially like Google Docs, you can't necessarily grade the APA formatting or different spacing aspects. So be very clear on what it is, but also direct them to where you can gain that information. The fundamentals in today's world, everyone here is bombarded with this online business and classes. And in today's world, from when we wrote this to today, it's really just expanded exponentially. Use this information to assist students to understand how they contribute to the learning environment, as well as how they can distract from it. So sitting there, you know, some people are very caught if the background is busy or if people are moving around, things like that. And we want to assist students in learning online etiquette. So making sure that there's appropriate attire, appropriate locations around us, the privacy issues that we talked about before, and appropriate language and professionalism. With gatekeeping and feedback, we're going to go through this a little more, and we've talked about this already. Address it as it occurs, set up the expectations across the board for all students, but also utilize email and utilize those announcements and all those beautiful things that happen through Blackboard and through Zoom, that you can make sure that we're reiterating these for our students so that there's no confusion at the end of the semester. Now I'm going to pass to Ms. Perez on creating a sense of community for online students.
All right, so setting up a community for online is just a little bit different than it is when we are in a brick and mortar classroom. So what we do know is that when you do create a sense of community, that good things happen, right? Our students are going to stay in school longer, there are better outcomes in school. And the more important thing is that it provides them connection and it minimizes their feelings of isolation. That's going to be very key in an online environment. We're going to talk about that more in just a second, but if you look at what happens in a brick and mortar classroom, they get to talk when they're waiting for the professor to start class. They can talk afterwards. They can talk on breaks. They can walk to and from class together. They can meet in different locations. So there's a lot of options for them to work together to become a community. That's not available in an online classroom. In an online classroom, we are going to look more at what we do inside the classroom that's going to make a difference, right? Our online classrooms, we have to provide more intentional interactions. We have to provide intentional ways for them to interact with one another, whether it be through assignments or, as Dr. Mikolon mentioned, opening class early or staying a little bit later, allowing that dialogue to occur. That's what will build our community in an online classroom. So it's a little bit different. So if we want to move on and look at the social constructivism and andragogy portion of things, when we look at how our students learn and how they're going to take on this online environment, we know that that learning is occurring in a social context. It's their interactions with each other, it's their interactions with professors, it's those pieces that allow them to make meaning and to make that learning more meaningful for themselves. And that's what's going to create this interactive classroom. And it's something that's going to be intentional from the professor, and it's also going to be intentional on the student's part. So as they interact, as they discuss, as we give more opportunities for them to learn and speak with one another, that's what's going to build our community. And if we can move on and look at how the students could behave, what are they going to do that's going to create this online community? So our students are in charge of their own learning. That's what our andragogy tells us, right? Our students are in charge of it. When they take ownership of it, they're going to learn better. They're going to reach out for that social connection, that way that they're going to work together. And so if we give them the opportunities to work as a group, if we give them opportunities to discuss and interact, that's going to naturally build that online community. So if we create an online collaborative project, something that encourages them to reach out to each other, to speak outside of class, they're going to naturally build that community. They're going to build that support system and the support groups that they need that will continue to encourage the online community and will be a support system for them as they go through their projects and through their program. And then another really important thing is that students have to be willing to participate and open up. As a professor, you can offer all the discussion and openness that you want, but your students have to be willing to speak and to talk and to share. And so the last thing we can talk about when we talk about an online community is to look at the behaviors that the professor can exhibit that will give our students an idea of how to build this community. So if you can move on, Dr. Mikolon. And if we look at what professors can do, this is intentionality in how you're teaching your class, as well as the assignments that you create. So if you tend to be more pedagogical, where you're going to tell your students and not have as much interactions and dialogue, that's going to create a more isolating environment for the students, because they'll never speak to each other and they'll never speak with you. They'll just be listening to the professor. And so it's important to make sure that the classroom itself has a lot of opportunities for dialogue and discussion, that it's more collaborative, and that the assignments are going to encourage that collaboration as well, that we do those group work. And that group work can translate into the classroom, or we can have those groups working together, but also presenting on what they're learning, so that the environment becomes more of a collaboration and not just a one-sided nature. And now I'm going to transfer this over to Dr. Littlebear.
Thank you, Debra. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about providing feedback and guidance in an online format to students that will actually help them enhance development. So feedback, when we provide that to students, it actually increases the connection between the instructor and the learner. So when we talk about effective feedback, we're talking about addressing the student by their name with coursework specific comments. So if Debra was my student, I would say, Debra, great job on your APA style. Or Debra, you might want to work on, you know, some of your formatting and your references, that sort of thing. So it makes it very personable, because obviously I'm, you know, not face to face with her. So it makes it just a little bit more of a personal perspective. Also, frequency. Selecting a frequency is so important. And I know, like, you know, particularly when we're not in an online format all the time, the days just kind of run together. But selecting maybe a day that you can provide feedback to your students weekly. So for example, was today Tuesday? I might say, Tuesdays, I'm going to go through, do some grading, and provide individualized feedback. I teach counseling skills online. That, you know, is a bit challenging in itself, because we're doing everything via camera, via Zoom. So I want to make sure that I am providing regular, frequent feedback to my students. Also, the promptness of feedback. If you guys do discussion boards, I know some people love discussion boards. Some people, you know, are like, I could take them or leave them. But if you do discussion boards, it's great to have about 72 hours between the educator feedback and the student posts. So about 3 days max of feedback for discussion boards. And then for written assignments, I would say like best practice, great practice is about a week. And I know things happen. I mean, instructors are human too. So, we don't always get that feedback to our students in as timely of a fashion as we would like. But if we can try for that week, I know at University of the Cumberlands, we operate on bi terms. So it's an 8-week class. So and I've heard students say, it was 4 weeks after an assignment and I didn't have any feedback to know that I wasn't doing APA style correctly, or I really didn't know what that instructor's expectations were because it took a while. So that promptness is so important. Also, making sure that the feedback is clear and detailed. So by that, just if you're writing out feedback, make sure that you're describing, going through that Word document and going through exactly what you want to make clear to the student. Also balance, point out the positives as well as things that the student needs to work on. Because every student has strengths. So pointing out the things that are great also. And visible grading to students. So if you're using a learning management system like Blackboard or Canvas, they should have those capabilities there where the students can pretty much see their grading as it rolls in. So it's in like basically live time. So those are just some good ways to provide that feedback that can both be formative and summative for the student. Next slide, please. And guiding the student, Dr. Mikolon, I believe, touched on this a little bit about some faculty engagement, but making sure students are encouraged to meet those high expectations because it will help them basically lead into better engagement with their peers. Faculty can do this in many ways. So I mentioned discussion boards. Love them, hate them, it's sort of the the weird relationship, but faculty can comment along. I think they're a really useful tool because faculty can jump in there with the students. This encourages discourse and professionalism. So students could be talking about, let's say, a book they've read, but if the faculty jumps in there, there's like, oh, wow, this is really demonstrating professionalism, and it's encouraging some higher level thinking there. Also, individual meetings, you could encourage these as either a check-in, so maybe this is with your students in your class or advisees, or it can help you address issues related to student progress, or hopefully, touch on maybe some of those potential gatekeeping issues that might arise. And chats, I don't know about Dr. Mikolon, but I don't really use a chat form too much, but the research does show that professional interactions can occur in live written form. We do chats in Zoom, which is nice, but sometimes we turn off the chat features or really tone them down. Like Dr. Mikolon's saying in the expectations, you might not want a whole lot of just chat with students, but it's nice as like a sidebar. So sometimes a student will personally send a chat to me about something going on or a question, and then I can discuss that with chat. Also emails, it's more personal and does allow that one-on-one attention. So of course emails are great for that, and I do encourage that to be the first line. I do provide a phone number for students. I have a business number they can call, and we can do a phone chat as well, but emails tend to get the attention a little bit sooner. Okay, so we're going to talk, I think Debra and I are going to talk a little bit about some of the various assignments that will enhance student learning and reinforce those CACREP standards. So I'm going to touch a little bit on CACREP first. There's so much about CACREP that I'm not going to go really into that too deeply. But when you're forming assignments, excuse me, we know that CACREP determines those general guidelines for the knowledge to be achieved and those student learning outcomes. So those are listed on the syllabus, what CACREP wants us to be teaching in that class. And the grading helps maintain certain requirements that are done for an acceptable assignment that matches those standards. So according to Bonner, there's a backward course design that works best if we follow. So first off, instructors have to determine what the student learning outcomes are, and also what the instructor desires for students to learn. So first off and foremost, know what's expected in that course according to CACREP. Go through, okay, what would I like the students to learn? So it's kind of like a mixture of evidence-based and style kind of combined. And then secondly, assessments and activities are selected by the instructor based upon student learning outcomes and goals. So that allows for, that's the creativity there. So, if I say I want to do some videos, or I want to do breakout rooms in the class, I have that option based upon that. It might be certain assignments that match well. So yeah, just collaborating with other faculty, doing your own research and digging, and you can find ways that we can meet those SLOs and also your own desires. And then of course, your teaching methods and learning experiences support the desired outcomes. So whether it's lecture-based, like I said, doing like small group breakouts in the rooms, if you want to do like, excuse me, group projects, whatever that is, you make sure it's all supported. So you can see how that helps to determine what the assignments might look like. And I believe Dr. Mikolon is going to talk to us a little bit about an assignment and kind of how that was formed based on these type of standards.
Thank you. So one of the things that we need to look at is how to combine all of those aspects that Dr. Littlebear was just discussing. So one assignment that I've utilized in my classes, I teach human sexuality and motivation and change. This can be tailored to any kind of class that we're looking at. We want to outline what the project is and the examples of how many points. So they'll do a proposal. Students will write a 2-page proposal, and in the syllabus, we're going to outline exactly what's expected. So with references and based in research, a literature review of what the project is. So in human sexuality, it's an idea of personal research on an aspect of human sexuality as it relates to counseling. For motivation and change, it was utilizing motivational interviewing skills with a specific population to enhance treatment outcomes. So within that broad topic, students can personalize their learning to a population or an issue that they are interested in that will be able to forward their particular career in the future. Once that proposal is approved, and it's basically just a lot of times at this point, the professor is going to bring a lot of focus to that proposal, because if you're only doing a 10 to 15 minute presentation, students will kind of grab a large topic and it's going to be too much and they're going to feel overwhelmed. So kind of bringing that down to a very specific population or specific issue. The evidence-based paper that they're going to write is a research paper. So we're practicing that APA formatting, we're practicing writing and really getting that professionalism and communication ready. That's going to be worth 200 points. And we do a presentation in Zoom. We would like to be able to do it in class, but as Dr. Littlebear said, we function on 8-week buy terms. So if we're doing 3 weeks of presentations, we're only focusing on presentations and not going over the basic material of the course. So what we'll do is have this done as a weekly presentation as a discussion board. So the presenter will present their video, and students will watch at least 3 of those and comment back on what they saw that was interesting and pose any questions. And then the presenter will respond again to those questions as we go through. So this way, students can watch as many of them as they want, but we still have that individual time with the students in class. Having done them both ways, the feedback from students was if we do them in class, it's great, but they're kind of feeling like they're missing out on that core material, and we'd have to combine that down out of a 6-week or 8-week semester down to 5 weeks, so that makes it a little too intense. They're going to create a PowerPoint and present it on Zoom, much like we are. So they're learning to utilize that technology of having themselves on screen as well as the PowerPoint. And then that discussion board prompt that we talked about will give them 20 points each for the 3 weeks. So they'll present as the presenter, they will present their PowerPoint and their video to their class. Peers will respond to those, and then the presenter will respond back, and we'll roll through that for 3 weeks. So that's worth 300 points plus the 60 for the responses for 360 points. Supplements in the syllabus include a detailed rubric for each of these. So the proposal, what's expected, how are we going to grade it, what's the information that we need, outlining the number of professional references. And we may want to limit the number of online sources that we can use, because a lot of times students will go in and find a lot of online sources, but we want to keep these professionally evidence-based in the literature and the research. Creating a reference PowerPoint has the expectations of this assignment. I have one created and posted in each class so that they are able to go in and review that. In addition to when we talk about it in class, it walks them through that aspect. And for doctoral students, we can make this presentation longer as it would be for a professional conference. So my classes have both master's students and doctoral students. But for the doctoral students, we increased it from 10 minutes to a full hour. They're working in teams. And we added in a summary of the presenters or presentation, just like you would utilize to propose to a professional presentation, an annotated bibliography of their sources, so they have a handout ready, and an individual summary and peer grading. This is an individual summary, is just a summary of what it was like to work on this project and what they learned from doing this. And peer grading allows them to give very specific feedback to the professor of what the groups were like, because having all worked in group projects, some students don't carry as much work or weight in that project as others, but it allows the professor to understand how that group functioned. Each student is graded for handing in that peer grading. They get points just flat off the top, but it doesn't affect the negatively if someone didn't do a lot of work, but it gives you insight into how that group was functioning as a professor. Now, Deb was one of my students who did this doctoral program. So she's going to share some insights and some perceptions from a student's point of view of what this is like.
Absolutely. So I've done both of these projects, both the shorter 10 to 15 minute version, as well as the longer hour version. And the first thing I'm going to say as a student, when they look at this, they kind of get a deer in the headlights kind of look. And so one of the things that's really important is the explanation. Dr. Mikolon takes a good amount of time going through each piece and helping the students understand just exactly what's expected. And the rubrics are very, very clear. If you follow the rubric, you're gonna hit it all and you're gonna do really well. So I think those two pieces are most important when you use a assignment such as this, is just making sure that you're very clear, both in the rubric and in the presentation of it in class. But what's really awesome, the part that I absolutely loved about both of these assignments is I took my paper from the shorter presentation and I turned it into a book chapter that has already been accepted and is just pending publication. And then for the presentation that we did for the doctoral students, my partner and I took that presentation and we've now presented it at conferences, and we were able to take that as an outline to be able to use for other presentations as well. So what's really great about this, if you look at it from an andragogical perspective, is that not only are they learning about the material, but they can do something with this. They can take this and turn it into something else. And especially for doctoral students, that's a great practice. And as we hear all the time, another line on their CV, to be able to present this and have an outline and know what's needed and have all those information accessible, so that if they want to present this topic or something else, they already have the experience with it. So overall, it was a really valuable, both of them were very valuable assignments. But I'm also going to move on, and we're going to talk about a couple of other things that can really tie in these CACREP standards the way Dr. Littlebear was explaining it. And that's if you look at the idea of fact sheets and case studies, because not all classes are going to be set up to be able to do, the presentations or have these sort of bigger assignments. And maybe you need something that provides your ability to assess your students' learning and material through through what's needed in the CACREP standards. But you can't do a bigger project, so you can do fact sheets. And what's really great about fact sheets is that they're completely customizable. You can put them for any topic anything that you're studying, you know, you can do, I listed them both, fact sheets and case studies, because they kind of go hand in hand. If a fact sheet is a little too short, you can do a case study, especially when you're looking at ethics and whatnot. And so the great thing about these is they can then be used outside of class. If I create a fact sheet and on anxiety, if I can get it out, as you go through that fact sheet, now I have something I can someday give my clients. So if I have a lot of different topics, these are things that I can utilize later. And for doctoral students, even more so, because doctoral students can create them and give them to students later. They can give them to their supervisees later. So there's lots of different ways that you can build on this. And it's something that's a takeaway rather than just another check mark, I got my assignment done. And what I really appreciated about fact sheets is that they truly are customizable. You can literally describe exactly what you want on the fact sheet, or you can leave it completely open to your students' interpretation. You can just say, pick a topic, let's say anxiety still, and just give me what you know about anxiety. Or for medication, you know, if we're doing a neuro class, you know, here's anxiety, tell me what the medications are and how the side effects and those sort of things. So they really can be completely customizable. And the great thing is that if you give the students the leeway, then they can do what's meaningful for them, which is going to increase their learning. So we don't necessarily have to say exactly what's on there, but maybe it's just a topic. And then students can be free to put on there what matters to them. And the other thing is that the point value is completely flexible. You can add, it can be an assignment that's worth, you know, 10, 15, 20 points. Or these can be a big bulk assignment and they can be worth 100 points or more. So there's just so much flexibility with them, and they will hit all the CACREP standards based on how you set them up. And so I'm going to move this back to Dr. Mikolon.
Okay.
I'm going to pass to Dr. Littlebear for our summary.
I'll go ahead and summarize this up, since we did want to leave some time for sort of some discussion and little collaboration at the end. So teaching synchronously, like we've been talking about, is really, really similar to teaching in a brick and mortar classroom. I've done both, and it's really not this earth-shattering difference, but it does take just a little bit more preparation for the instructor and the diligence in assisting students from, you know, what they need to know, and just learning the appropriate etiquette, because I mean, it is a personal thing. I mean, we've, you know, read research on how it's personal. People are in their homes and their own, you know, own environments learning, and then having that camera in the house can be a bit overwhelming. And some of you are probably learning that now with students as it does move online more, and Zoom has just become so popular. But yeah, and just helping with that and helping them learn the professionalism, because we're teaching them to go out into the field, but yeah, you know, everybody's kind of just sitting in their houses. So we have to foster that environment. And also communication in all forms is key. Use emails, class announcements. I use tons of class announcements. You know, every time I want to direct the students' attention to something, we use Blackboard as our LMS. And I'll say, hey, I've posted something up under content, check it out, posted new videos, whatever the case might be. PowerPoints are great. I have a bunch of different PowerPoints in mine. I've pulled together some PowerPoints to help them. I've created my own PowerPoints. So PowerPoints are a great tool, and the students can read over those as a supplement to their text. And also individual discussions are so important. I've been meeting with all of my students individually to go over their video they've done in the process and techniques, which is their clinical skills class. So we meet individually, go over their videos, because I feel like that adds such an extra touch to it. I got great feedback when I tried it, kind of piloted it. So now I'm kind of making it a part of the grade and part of the class to have this meeting. But other things we might need to discuss, if there's an issue with something in their writing, if there's even a small potential, there's a gatekeeping concern, I try to talk to the students. Plagiarism, you know, that's a big thing, and every institution handles that a little bit differently, you know, whether they're, you know, there's a zero tolerance, or, you know, if students, you know, maybe get a little bit of some mentorship on that, you know, just, I think it's all individualized. and just using these tools to help students in their learning. And I think that the students appreciate that, and the willingness to work with them on whatever they need, and to have these one-on-one meetings is so critical. Is that about it on our PowerPoint side, Dr. Mikolon? Yeah, okay, so like I said, we wanted to leave this time, because I feel like, especially with what, as we say in Georgia, everything going on right now, but with the COVID-19 and everybody online, we wanted to leave this time for any questions or any type of discussion you all might have, because I feel like there's a lot of people out there with some great thoughts on this. And, I feel like this is just going to really expand in the future, and that we're going to have to get really more and more creative and looking at our syllabus and all of that. So feel free, you can chat or ask us a question.
And if not, we understand you have more trainings to get to and presentations today, so we fully understand that concept as well.
Definitely.
I have a quick question. It's more so just kind of a logistical question right now with what's going on with COVID-19. So I'm about to start teaching an online course, and one of them is for practicum for school counselors. And so I just wonder, I'm working right now as a school counselor in North Carolina. And so my wonder is, are those type of classes still going on at your department levels? Like, how is that working right now? So more logistical, but I am curious because I don't know if I'm going to have students or not and what that's going to look like.
So clinical classes like practicums and internships. Yeah, those are still very much going on. We've had to tweak some things on the clinical side right now, and I think with students going to sites or not going to sites and having to get into the virtual world. So it really is much modeling how they've been learning in the classroom is how they're now having to go out and counsel. But yeah, most institutions, I believe, are still, trying to get their practicum and intern students along the river there, from what I've been reading, because it's a challenge, and I know it's frustrating for students as well to be worried about those hours.
And kind of making that transition to the online or virtual counseling versus going to a clinic, because with wanting to keep the students and the clients safe, that going there face-to-face has been something that we've had to modify and revamp. So yeah, we're still having those clinical courses going on. It's just we're working with the students on how to change that over for them and helping them to go through the technology. Having had Zoom as a format that we've used for classes, though, has been reported by a lot of the students that it's helped them a lot, because at least they know how to get on, log in, use the video and all that. So now they're able to help train their clients on how to utilize the technology, which seems to be a real strength for people. Deb, did you have a comment?
We have a question from Lorraine. She's wanting to know about the cap size for classes. How many students in class is most effective?
Now at the University of the Cumberlands, we try to keep it around 20. And I think that the absolute cap, Dr. Littlebear, is about 25. But for the clinical courses, we try to keep them a lot smaller. It can get kind of lost in translation when you have this, but one of the great features of utilizing Zoom is that if you use the, I'm trying to think of the name of it up on the top, not the speaker view, but the
gallery view.
The gallery view, you can see everyone in the class. So it kind of comes out like the old Brady Bunch where everybody is there, but you can see your students and they can see you and see each other. So it creates more of that group feel rather than just having one face on the screen at a time. So we've been utilizing that, but usually our classes are kind of peaking somewhere around 20. And I believe the cap is written as 25. Do we extend that sometimes based on individual needs? Sure, but we try to keep it in that number.
All right, we have a question from Roma. How do you manage time in an online class?
I tend to break, I know for me and Dr. Mikolon might be a little different, I tend to break mine up like time-wise, like lecture time, discussion time, and then I do like, I'm a big fan of breakout sessions because then it makes that room of 20 go down into groups of 2 or 3, particularly in my clinical skills classes. So I leave usually about half the time for that and then processing at the end. So it's actually, I find it pretty easy to manage time. And our classes are only an hour and a half each for each week. So we don't get a lot of time. That hour and a half flies by. So we really, I find myself having to condense what I want to do sometimes into that, and then putting all the supplemental things in Blackboard and say, go check this out later, because we're not going to be able to spend time in class necessarily with all that. And Dr. McCollum, did you have anything on that?
Well, very much similar. I like to create a PowerPoint, and for the first couple of classes, we'll share the PowerPoint like we are here, and it keeps a very structure and creating that structure from the beginning of an outline for the class. We're going to do in the first class introductions of me, introductions of our TA, introductions of the students. And we go through a review of the assignments, then we go through the lecture and questions at the end. Each class, I tend to start with questions or concerns from the last time. Then we move into our current discussion, but even breaking in, like, these question marks are great to put on a slide because they know this is the time we're going to talk. Because sometimes when we're on a topic, having lots of questions intervene online can be confusing for students of when to share. So creating this time or this open discussion times in there in our PowerPoint can be an aspect. And in some of the classes, I post the PowerPoint for them to utilize, and then we will go through and discuss those topics. And maybe not post it in class, but they have it available on another screen, or they print it out that we can review. So setting forth those expectations, but really providing that time at the beginning and end to ask questions and process.
All right, we have another question. To control plagiarism, how long do you advise mentoring?
Advise mentoring, is that the question?
Yes, to control plagiarism, how long do you advise mentoring?
I think it's going to depend on the level of the class, because if they are brand new to the program, I would take more time with that. I mean, that might be, a week or two working with it, versus like if they're halfway through the program and I'm seeing some red flag issues, it's going to be a little bit, I hate to say, I don't want to use the term strict, but it's going to be more like, okay, what are the expectations? And I'm going to put it more to the student, like, to know about this, because some students do come in and they really don't know a lot about plagiarism, even though you think, oh, people know about this. So they kind of get a little bit more, okay, let me talk to you about this. Let's meet about this. Let me give you a chance to correct this and work on this. And they're 9 times out of 10, like, oh my gosh, I really didn't know. And it feels pretty genuine. But then like in the program more, it's like, what are our expectations? And it falls more on them. I don't know if you have a different way, Dr. McCollum, of.
I teach our theories class every semester, and with master students coming in, APA can sometimes be something new. They haven't necessarily come from a counseling or psychology program. So what I'll do is I'll give and my TA will give very detailed feedback on APA, and even cite where to look it up in the book for the first couple of weeks. And then probably in week 3 or 4, we start to take away points for those things that they're not kind of working that. Being able to provide even links to show them where they can do that and finding those things, but taking that time to walk them through what plagiarism is. And even in class, we'll do a presentation at the beginning of our second week of what plagiarism is, how to avoid it, and how to cite correctly, and posting that for the students to refer back to, because although we tell them the APA manual is mandatory, it's not necessarily something that they purchase. So I think our time is almost up, right?
We have one more question. When setting up course syllabus and coursework, is there a template and you add in your course info, or are you creating from scratch each time?
We fortunately do have templates available, because we have multiple instructors for classes. So we share and we have sort of a skeletal structure that helps. So if we're talking about like the backward model, excuse me, that I was discussing, that helps sort of set the stage. And then the instructor gets to go in and fill in other assignments. Now you do have one particular assignment that every class is going to have to do. It's like a signature piece. But other than that, the instructor gets to fill that in with whatever they see fitting to meet those outcomes. So it actually seems to work out pretty well for us.
Yeah, and we have one faculty member for each class that's responsible for keeping the main one. And that way, any additional changes that go out, if I'm responsible for human sexuality, I would send that out to everyone. They'd have access to any of the changes with university policy changes, Title IX information, things like that, and the core assignments. Then each instructor can tailor those to how that they want to present them and adjust the schedules to match their schedule a little bit.
And we're working on sort of a skeleton for Blackboard as well to like help be able to help share some materials better. So that can be also like a technology thing that we run into. But yeah, we want people to have access to what they need to help build the class.
Okay, Veronica tells us she's a doc student and will begin co-teaching as part of an internship. What does this look like in reality? Well, I can talk about that. I'm actually Dr. Mikolon's TA. I've TA'd for her for several classes. And it's really going to depend on the faculty member that you work with. So for me, I teach 2 classes for each class that I TA. I help grade each week. And so it's just going to be dependent on what your faculty member wants you to do. But that's what I do for Dr. Mikolon. And maybe you can talk about what that looks like on the professor side.
Yeah, one of the things that I've always wanted to look at is making time for teaching assistants to actually get that practice of actually teaching a class, doing the grading for different assignments and walking through. But as Deb said, it's going to depend on each professor and how they envision the use of a TA. So for me, I want to utilize that time and teach. Basically, I'm teaching the class, but I'm also working with my teaching assistant on learning how to grade and answering any questions there. So Deb and I have a very open communication where we'll go back and forth on things. But again, each professor is different. Now, most of the professors I know work very much that way, but just ask your boss for the professor on what they're expecting your role to be and how they would expect those questions to flow back and forth. All right.
And it looks like we have one more.
Okay.
Applicable assignment ideas in a skill class.
I will defer to Dr. Littlebear.
So for me, one of my favorite assignments is I'll have videos that the students can watch. I have this set of sort of the wrong way and the right way to do counseling techniques, and the students will write these, they'll answer questions, respond to feedback on these videos. So that's one of my favorites. They don't get a whole lot of big fluffy papers in this class because it's mostly skills-based. I have them record 2 videos with a partner in class or from class. They don't do it in class, and they submit that and get graded on that. So they'll get on Zoom and do that with each other. That's one of their really big assignments. And then some of the other things, I have them discuss material that they've learned, like from the text and whatnot, and about skills. So there's just a variety of different assignments that you can do with that. But yeah, I think the main thing is that experiential component for that class is like making the videos and watching, then you get to watch those and give them feedback. So that's my favorite part of it.
All right, we understand that everyone has more, well, you might have lunch or more presentations to get to. So we're going to wrap up, and thank you for showing up today and for all of your questions. And we hope that we were helpful for you. Have a great day.
Thank you all so much for attending. You all have a great